Hello, everybody. It's Lenny Murphy here with another one of our CEO series interviews. And today, another first for me. We are chatting with Andrew Appel, CEO of IRI. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Lenny.
It's good to have you. So it's interesting how this situation has now allowed me to talk to CEOs of larger companies that I hadn't spoken to in the past. So you're a notch on my belt now, Andrew. So.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. We'll need to get you a better balance. We'll need to get you a better balance.
Well, I didn't say how high on the belt you were, so we'll see after this is done.
So we'll see if we can keep up today with some of the great other colleagues that I've seen at the program.
Well, I appreciate it. So we, for our listeners, Andrew and I actually were chatting a lot right before we hit record. So we're going to try and recapture the magic of some of the chat that we were just having informally. So Andrew, you are in Chicago, working from home, and let's just start out. How are you doing? How's this adaptation of running an incredibly large organization from home working for you?
Look, I think in the call it relative position of all of the people going through very difficult times, we're doing fine. Constantly remind ourselves how lucky we are to, have the wherewithal to have a place to work at home, for example, and to be able to, worry about how to get food to the house and how to homeschool. And we're in the fortunate small percentage of people in the world whose lives are changed mildly, let's say, right? And there's a lot of people that are struggling to put food on the table out there. Those are the people that have real challenges. I think my wife's a therapist, and so I get and she talks to 20 clients a week, so I get the week by week kind of state of call it the working group, because our clients tend to be kind of executive workers in our economy, and the era of fear and anxiety to then worrying about their job, then losing their jobs, and we constantly remind ourselves that we are fortunate. And then IRI as an organization, works with is in a subset of the economy, provides research services for companies that are busy. But I will say that it's weird to be, to like never leave the house. Like your home is your work. My wife's like increasingly every minute. And she's like at 10 last night, look, I love you. I don't. Can we just shut this off? I have my 2 laptops and 2 iPads, and trying to lead a company from a desk in your house is also just a fascinating experience. But we got but so far so good. How about that? So far so good. We're working through our wine cellar. Decided that there's no need to save any good bottles that have been set. So that, in the end, we're like, we're good consumers of our clients' products, and we are definitely decided that anything we were saving for something special, like there's never going to be a more important moment. Might as well work through it now.
There we go. Live in the moment. Absolutely. Early on, as my wife and I were kind of talking through this, and I would use the term the new normal. It's like, it's not the new normal. It's just the new now, right? Let's just live in the now. And that's why I love her. She keeps me grounded. It sounds like your wife may be doing a little bit of the same, right? So
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was thinking, it's surreal, I think, how much and how quickly things are changing on a scale, that's like never happened before in the history of the world. And then each day is like something. It's so, I find it funny that you and I can talk about, well, we went into the grocery store, we put a mask on, and we then have a disinfectant station. And a week ago, that would have been an awkward conversation. And here we are today, and so it's the new normal, to use the term that we weren't. And so it's and your conversations with your colleagues about George is opening up, and you just think to yourself, this is the most surreal. Like 2 months ago, you'd have been talking about a state of the country, opening up, and
Yeah.
it becomes the new normal. And you kind of have to remind yourself all the time just how strange it is. Otherwise, it becomes a new normal. And then, just given what we do and the clients we work with, we're part of, in our own little way, ensuring that the food supply, or making sure that clients have the information they need. So we're also kind of in a way of, we can influence a little bit the outcome of this. I'll get to a couple other examples of that as we go on.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because some folks may not be clear on the role that IRI plays within the ecosystem. Before you even answer the question, IRI and Nielsen, when you think about the research space, you're part of it, but you fulfill kind of a unique niche, right? So both companies are, just from an example, somewhat separated from the traditional research space, at least the way that I tend to think about it, right? You're not adjacent, you're part of it, but you're just kind of over here a little bit. So a lot of folks may not be familiar with everything that IRI does. So let's talk about that for a minute before we get into some of the more specific topics we want to cover. It's kind of level setting. So can you talk about IRI's role, especially now? You've hinted at that, the role that you're playing helping companies now.
Yeah, thematically, right, what's made us slightly different, is that, our research has always been off the base of data sets that are widely built and what, it's called syndicated data, but it's data sets that are by nature covering a very broad base of like purchase information or consumer behavior or digital information, media, whatever it is. We come with the lens of gathering unique data at scale that is gotten from the many to the many, and we play a role in the center of like processing. So the historic core was point of sale data. We work with retailers to get point of sale data. We smashed it all together with a bunch of interesting characteristics of products and new products and old products, and then we provide a plethora of access ways to that, whether it's the traditional like market share, this week to of stores or consumers basically. And over the time, we have appended, call it, all those data sets with sophisticated technology to automate the analytics associated with it. So we've become more of a technology desk to a lot of the people who run big companies. And then in the last 8 years, we've kind of moved from looking at the retailer as a data source to the retailer as another company that needs to use information to become better at managing itself. And so that's the part that, when I say we're kind of in the middle of this thing, it's like in the last 4 weeks, I've probably spoken to the CEO of 5 of the top 7 retailers, and 5 of the top 7 manufacturers, or 5 of the top 10, because we're providing data, analytics, and services. And at this crazy time, like what is that's one of the sole ways in which you can figure out what's going on. There's no time to do a survey, or there's less time. And the surveys right now would be so focused on they're not scalable, right? So they're no value, 2 months later versus 2 months before. And so, we tend to be like an on-demand resource. We often have people, on location. So we'll have, 20 people at, one of the, we already work with all 3 of the major grocers who are using our data to understand what their business is working. We have more than 10 people at every one of them. So those people are busy trying to figure out out of stock models and delivery models and DC models and customers. And then we have people at, big CPGs, one that's well known as Campbell's. Mark was just on Kramer, talking about, the move to comfort food, and we're there, trying to help them understand, demand, kind of production, consumer, and all that. So that's kind of what puts us, on. So we're a company that has to run itself and take care of its people. At the same time, our teams have never been busier that are at the, front, because we're like in this, and we've introduced a bunch of stuff we've talked about. Does that make sense? And we're here in the US, we're in like, 12 markets around the world. So these phenomena of like, Italy. So we have a webcast, our head of Italy, and we had 2,000 people on it, including, 35 people from one of our newer, major CPGs, because people were trying to understand, the week to week or day to day changes in behavior in Italy and how that might play out here. When you read about the food supply and the meat companies and all their, what's going on, those are our clients. We're there trying to help them understand, okay, if I can't quite make enough, what should I make and where should I put it?
Yep. That's really, really interesting. Actually, so a bunch of questions now when we get into another part of the conversation in a few minutes around changes to supply chain management. That's one of the things that I think we'll see a pretty profound shift there. But we'll get to that in a minute. Thank you. So, what have you learned through this process as a leader, as a CEO? What's been kind of the big moments that you thought, I never thought I'd have to deal with these questions or these things, but here I am, and now that's a valuable lesson in your own development.
It's I've never thought I'd have to worry about the health and safety of 5,000 people. And so, while at the same time worrying about my own health and safety, and not with all the uncertainty that is slowly diminished, but what can I, so here you are, like, I'm 55. I've said this many times to my life, like, for a while, it wasn't clear if I was in the risk group, not risk group. I've got kids, and so you're going through your own anxieties. And at the same time, I think, I just worry, like feeling like the decisions we make as a leadership team can actually impact somebody's real life, like survival. Like, how do we get people home, and the emotional leadership role that has taken. So we've, for the first 4 weeks, it was mostly about what's going on. How do I make sure everybody's safe? My messages to my teams were like, we had one employee who had the COVID in France, and I'm like, is their family safe? Can we get them something? Team, like, if we have to get a hotel for the whole family because they live in a way they can't quarantine themselves, like, we need to do that. Like, this is our, these folks are our, I don't know, there was this like familial, and we've done, a lot more communication. This format for town halls has proven to be so much better. I mean, we've had 2, and we've done them regionally because each region is different. So instead of a global call, we've had 2 2-hour calls, or 6, and the feedback and the format is so much more intimate. Some of the employees have said, I felt like Andrew was talking to me, and some of them, like, they're not easy, positive, all things are rosy messages. This is about, continuing to remind people, like, you need to make good decisions, right? We are not, if you feel like we're doing anything as an organization that's putting you in any way uncomfortable or personal harm, we understand that these are emotionally difficult times. We recognize that everybody has a story. And if your story isn't consistent with, you're on a team that's working really hard, as I said, our client, then you need to raise your hand and tell us this. We're going to figure out how to make sure that your physical and emotional health is there. And that's our obligation as your company. And that emotive kind of style versus like we are here to drive growth and help clients, and we're an innovator and it's all about speed and decision making. And the feedback has been, we were looking at, I mean, it's unbelievable, even in some not so easy messages, because we've done some things to just batten down the battleship just in case. So we've said, look, let's just pause hiring, right? Or let's defer raises for a couple months because we don't know what the world's going to look like in a couple months. Or we're going to take our bonuses and we're just going to spread them out over 4 months just because I don't know what May looks like. And I promise you that, and we took one of the messages that resonated was and I said, look, this is not about us making, so we're going to take the interest on any deferred anything, and we're going to give it to like places that are feeding people that are losing their job. And so, in that tone, I think as a leader, and your question about first, just the new balance towards the care and safety, that was I don't know, it's just been a change. And then the mechanism to communicate, like we do these surveys. I mean, I've been doing town halls for 6 years. Usually it's like we're at the end in a room with 300 people. It looks like a little person bouncing with an iPhone as if we're at a concert in row 6. Right? And they're like, oh, and it looked, and people just think the forum. So it's just so much more intimate, and it'll be a bunch of people, like we'll have the leadership.
Yeah. So one, it's inspiring, by the way, to hear you talk about the changes that you've made, because IRI is a large organization, right? I know a lot of smaller companies that weren't able to make some of those same decisions, right? And that's we all do what we need to do. I think what I've been hearing consistently from talking to everybody, and what keeps coming to mind is authenticity and humility. Right? I think this has helped strip away just a lot of the bullshit, right? That we all tend to just surround ourselves with in a lot of ways, and prioritized just being human, right, and making good human connections with people. And I hope that that's one of those changes that sticks. Right? That's the big question for our clients right now, right? What is a transient behavior change, and what is a permanent behavior change? And we're guessing, right? We really don't know overall what that's going to look like. We're getting signs of that, and I expect, especially for you with IRI, right? Which of these shopping trends are permanent? Is everybody a hoarder now? Or will we get back to normal capacity? I think I'm a hoarder now. Unfortunately, we just bought a new fridge, so we have our third fridge, right? Because it's thinking I never want to be in a situation again where I have to worry about do I have enough food to feed my family. So I've noticed. Well, first, my oldest daughter is getting her master's degree in public policy and urban planning with a focus on sustainability. So we've been having lots of distance conversations because she doesn't live at home now on these ideas. It's been a bonding experience for us, right? Because we have this common interest. And what does it look like? And what I've noticed is my neighbors have been planting gardens, and even we have planted a small garden, but very small, like an herb garden. And thinking, how prevalent does this become, right? How prevalent is this as a behavior change that people are going to want to grow their own food, right? How prevalent is it that rather than relying on retailers, folks buy 3D printers to be able to manufacture, things they need at home more quickly, not be dependent on that? What happens to our supply chains? Are we going to have centralized supply chains, like we tend to now? or is everything going to be rapidly distributed, right? Is it Amazon model everywhere, right? There's just tons of warehouses all over the place and localized manufacturing, and all those questions are just really interesting on, what does that do to our society? What does it do to culture? So, what's your take? What are your clients, as much as you can share? What are you guys seeing? What are your clients telling you? What's your sense of what the future looks like, just from that focus of getting stuff to people that they
Yeah.
need in the future?
I think so I think there's been a legitimate like movement back to the brands of the past. Like we're definitely seeing the comfort, whatever, the brands of it's almost something my wife would say, it's like we go back to the things we had as children, because in this complex environment, we are moving towards the things that created positive connectivities to us. So you're seeing the Crafts, the Campbell's, the Nestle's, just, for now, a rotation back to call it comfort brands. They also happen to have the scale, I think, to keep products on the shelf. I think you're seeing a migration back. People want to get in and out of retailers, so you're seeing a migration to bigger, more traditional. While at the same time, like if it's not available, you're seeing an explosion of the Amazons of the world. And so how it, for now, it plays out as, an increase in, shopping at traditional stores relative to non-traditional, like big traditional grocery stores are doing well. Um, an increase in like the brands of our youth and, things that, and a lot, and a decrease right now. And I think the naturals and organics and the trend towards, creative assortments and stuff like that. You're also seeing retailers having to reduce their assortments because of just getting flow through. There is still an expectation, almost on any scenario that people are going to be eating home more, cooking more, no matter how much it opens up. There's plenty of evidence in China that it's wild for the restaurants to come back, even in society, that people are. So you've got a rotation to, we think there's a continued growth. And I think because of some of that, you're seeing, you're going to, if I were a CEO of a medium-sized or smaller, more interesting CPG, I'm going to have to work harder to get share of mind of my distribution. I'll probably have to work harder to get share into the e-commerce channels, but I suspect even the Amazons of the world are going to have to like manage assortment. I'm not an expert in Amazon's VCs, but in the end, unless people relax their desire for the overnight delivery, which they have, right? People are now comfortable again with the delayed delivery. You're seeing that rotation back to things people feel like they can trust, and all of a sudden something that's been in a can for a week feels more trustworthy than something that was made in the local deli, weirdly, right? So, and that'll probably stick for a while. And I think, especially if those organizations can make, they are healthy and stable, and that's great. There is, whether the state, and I think on the supply chain one, there's been enough disruption. My guess is that for quite a while, like companies, I was reading something, companies are going to have a contingency plan and some proportion of supply, more inventory of raw materials, more, risk planning. The idea of just-in-time supply chains may need to relieve itself so that there's more storage, because there's some real issues in like accessibility to all sorts of products, whether it's vegetables that come from South America or rice that comes from other parts of the world, or raw materials. I read something like Clorox is, a lot of the raw materials for those products are going to take a couple months to regain, as it's going to be harder to get back to normal production. So Whether people decide to, grow their own food, and that trend that was emerging continues, probably not as much direct evidence of it other than anecdotal. So probably stay away from things that I'm not so sure of. But I will say that it is, very unclear what the next, period of time is going to look like in terms of what people buy and where they buy it. And so my advice to companies and research companies is that be fast. I was talking to the CEO of one of the top 3 grocers, and we were comparing notes, and our view is just, he's like, I don't know what the world's going to look like in 2 months, but what I can control is the pace by which we get information and make decisions. It's kind of a similar view I have. It's like, I'm not so sure. Be nimble, be responsive and nimble, and that's for our industry. I think it's an interesting challenge because the nature of research and clients is that the next question is the next specific question, the 5 whys. And so we get over the decades more precise, and precision takes longer, not fast. So the whole notion of like 80-20 is not the inherent nature of the market research.
Right. We're not known for our agility and nimbleness. So
9-1 versus 80-20 in this environment. So that's been
that's great. I think that what you are an example of a company. IRI is an example of a company that earns its seat at the table, right? In terms of the importance of the data that you provide to the fundamental operations of your clients. And I think that what I'm hearing from a lot of folks, and I think that is true, is that actually research is more important than it's ever been. Right? There are these huge, big questions that everybody has of what's happening right now and what's going to happen tomorrow, and everybody needs to answer that. So I think that's great for the industry overall. What'll be interesting is how quickly we adapt to those changing needs, because some of those questions we can't answer yet, right? To your point, we have all this data. We're used to looking at data over time and establishing that. And some of these things we just don't have the time to figure it out right now. So let me frame this as a question instead of me pontificating. What do you think what does research as an industry and IRI's role in it look like 2 years from now? What does that vision that you're crafting for your organization look like?
Yeah, we have been heading towards here's why this will be an interesting question. We've had a very clear vision of where the research industry should go, and now I'm trying to frame that in the context of the new direction, which is speed. So we've had a view that we would be using technology, AI, ML algorithms to basically automate the traditional analysis process that we call insights.
Yeah.
And that we're moving away from call it charting to call it, in the fancy term it's called augmented decision making. But just think of like, a Google-esque access to all information and research, so that you can ask a question like, how's my brand doing in Tennessee? And you get an answer. As opposed to a platform that's designed to enable an analyst to spend 3 days doing that analysis. So it's a series of alerts. We're going from a pull to a push, and it's all about speed to decision making, democratized to the people who make the decision, right? So the role of insights moves from doing the work to enabling the work, and the insight professional becomes call it an experience manager, a teacher, right? Building the experience of the frontline decision makers that use the data, whether it's the CEO, the CFO, the CMO. And I think then you add to that the notion that for us to be successful in this environment, we have to run at the pace, faster is better, right? Faster and imperfect, right? Like we've been having conversations about demand forecasting tools, and they've historically been built on, it's a statistical model on historical data. And you're like, well, the historical data of the last 5 years is probably not the best indicator of what demand is going to be for a category in the next year. And maybe,
certainly not for toilet paper, right?
yeah. That's a great example. Like, there's a few of these early in this, I would say, there's some products whose underlying demand will not change because they have one use case. I evolved from toilet paper to diapers just because you could argue people, who come home will use more toilet paper at home. So it's a channel shift, but the underlying use, it has one. But I think, in many categories, you pick soup is a great example. Like, what's the demand forecast for soup? Well, it isn't an extrapolation of the last 2 years. It is a fundamental different model of like, consumption behavior, probability of home. You might need some probability of restaurant opening. You might need an algorithm for another country where that phenomenon has occurred, and there's a new tail coupled with demographics associated with and then you got to layer in a recession. And so we're getting a lot of questions about like what happened in the last recession, but you got to layer on top of that, you got two opposing forces, right? People coming home, changing behavior, and a recession. And so for market research to be effective in that environment, we have to, I think, be faster and more scenario oriented. So it isn't so much what is the demand forecast, which would be what we would think about, what will demand be in the fourth quarter. It is what is the information one needs and the decision-making process to be flexible enough to use a change in forecast to change what you make, which is ultimately and what you put on the shelf, what the companies that serve the consumers. So it's, but I think it does. Now that I connect the two together, I think it plays to the idea of like decision supporting, platforms versus analysis.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to be conscious of time, both for you and for our listeners. So one last question: what has been the most enlightening aspect of all of this for you personally? Not just as leader, but just for you as Andrew.
I think it's I come back to it's an interesting question, the most enlightening for us. I think it's this combination of caring about our organization and our people and our clients combined with, and it's strange, how do we move faster, create connections between people to be more creative in solving problems of our clients. I know that's kind of a strange. I'm sitting here thinking like, what has been the biggest, enlightenment for me, and it's probably been the role of leaders to take care of their people, and then how you take a bunch of people who have a lot of expertise and connect them to solve some of the most complex needs of our clients, right? So you're trying to keep yourself and doing it in a way that is tasteful. So I don't know how I translate that. I guess the other one is just the ability to communicate with people through platforms like this and really, create connections remotely. Like I think travel will be very different for a long
Yeah, oh, that's great. And I want to thank you for the time. and for the inspiration. It sounds like blowing smoke, but it's not. I've really been impressed by the humility, and uh, the obvious care and concern. So thank you. Right, there's a lot of CEOs that don't have those characteristics. So we've heard of lots of folks that didn't place their employees first. They placed the company first, and or what they thought was the right thing for the company. So just as another business owner, as another CEO, it's great to meet somebody else that has similar priorities, right? So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right. This has been great. Really appreciate your time. Hope that you and yours stay safe and healthy and prosperous through all of this. And hopefully we'll have a chance to do it again in a couple months and see what this other side looks like from your perspective. I'd love to get that take from you guys.
Thanks for the time. Good luck. Keep yourself sane.
Well, as much as that's a relative term.
Whatever. Like it does seem like from what I gathered, communicating this way is a little bit more normal for your life. But I think 6 kids and families and offices and all that, and worrying about food and safety. So I think stay sane, take care of yourself. This has been fun. I hope it's helpful. And I'd love to catch up in a couple months. It'd be fascinating to look back. We could look at this, and then we can think about how little we probably got right.
Absolutely. All right. So it's a tentative date, right? So we'll re-engage in a couple months, and then we'll laugh at how stupid we were, or clap ourselves on our back for wow, we got that pretty right on, didn't we? So
right. We're doing okay.
All right, Andrew, take care. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.